We don't yet.
Okie dokie. So we'll just cover off some things whilst we're waiting for colleagues, because welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this, the September SWFT Board of Directors. We've had a busy morning this morning, covering a whole panoply of different subjects, including the challenges faced by care homes in our geography during the COVID-19 situation, our preparedness for winter, including the challenges of a potential second wave of COVID, and a whole variety of different strategic updates. So busy morning already for the board, but delighted the members of the public who are watching this are able to join us. I would encourage, we have two questions from members of the public later on, but it would be good, and it is good, to get questions from the public. So if you want to ask a question at a future board, please just email me.
So Russell, Joy has now joined us.
Okay, great, thank you. I'll wait for Isabel and Callum to join us as well, if that's okay. So if you could let me know, Glenn. So I don't believe we have any apologies for absence. Do we have any new declarations of interest? Okie dokie. The last set of minutes of the meeting held on the 5th of August, was everyone happy with the accuracy of those minutes? Please come off mute if you've got any amends. On that basis, I will sign. So we'll then move on to the action points arising on page 15. And Glenn, if you'd be so kind, or Sarah, to tell me when Izzy and Callum join us. The first was on the integrated performance dashboard. The Director of Human Resources, Anne, to ensure a letter is sent out thanking all volunteers. Thank you for doing that, Anne. We then had the FTSE Guardian quarterly update and talking about different aspects of that. We've got Sue Pike joining us, and Sue, I'm conscious of the fact you need to leave for a meeting, so we'll be bringing you forward in the agenda. Anne would present the work done around recruitment to the Future Build workshop, and Matt did that this morning for us. Thank you very much, Anne. Then Kim to circulate a report to F&P on the action plan around suppliers being paid in a timely manner. That was done. Thank you, Kim. Then Anne to provide a presentation on recruitment. We discussed that, did that earlier. And then a cancer services investment case to be brought back to this board meeting. That's on the agenda, and we'll cover that off as an early item. On the nurse staffing report, Fiona to provide an update on information systems at the next board. You'll be doing that later, Fiona, thank you. And then also on the IPD, Helen to bring an update around the redesign of green pathways for theatres and the detail around mix of A&E attendances, and Helen, you'll be covering those later for us. In the future, we've got separate trend data on the annual medical revalidation report. Looking forward to that, Charles, in November, thank you. And then Anne to include some data within the report around recruitment figures by gender profile. We picked up on some of that today, but we'll do more of it again for the May 2021 board. Charles to hold a session on futility. That's scheduled for the November board workshop, and we had, as part of our discussion on care homes this morning, for members of the public's knowledge, a good discussion which Fiona's going to take forward on our behalf with Anne Coyle on how we can help on end-of-life issues with our care home colleagues and partners in our geography. Helen to ensure a presentation on digital innovation, come back to a future board report. We'll come back to that, but the digital hub over at Stratford is now open, and it's a fantastic facility. Glenn gave us a further update this morning, so it's just a shame we can't invite more members of the public to go and see it at the moment because of COVID, but we will get some pictures. I think there are some pictures already up on the website, but we'll ensure some are put up so that members of the public can see the great work that's been done there. A really pathfinding piece of activity by everyone involved in it, and we're very grateful to Sir Peter Rigby and his team at SSC for their work on supporting us in that regard. Helen to bring back to board or workshop, the positive work done with primary care. That's going to come back as part of the place recovery and restoration work. And then the winter plan we discussed this morning, as I've just indicated, and we'll come back to that in more detail in the public board session next month. And then a showcasing of the digital hub, which we've just partly talked about, but we'll do that in due course as well. Are there any matters arising that I've missed? So, Glenn, can you tell me, have Callum and Izzy been able to join us yet?
So, Russell, Callum has sent his apologies. We have Joy with us, but no Izzy yet. So I suggest we talk about Joy.
Joy, we're going to celebrate you and your team going the extra mile award, which is a bit out of date. So apologies for the delay, but because of COVID, as you can imagine. And I'd just like to read out what the sort of nomination said, Joy, and then Glenn can maybe add a few words. The team going the extra mile award for winter 2019-20 was presented to the IHT 8 South for adapting to changes within the team, going above and beyond for patients, supporting each other to understand new systems, and always working with a smile despite being under pressure. The members of staff who nominated the team said they work well together, are amazing, hardworking, caring, loving, happy, and always up for a challenge because they love their jobs. So, Joy, thank you very much on behalf of the board in terms of accepting this award. We're delighted for you. Glenn, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, probably just to add that one of the few things I love about my job is this part of the agenda where we celebrate the great work of staff. So they're a fantastic team, lots of really positive feedback from service users, but also from colleagues about their flexibility and the way they helped us during winter. And a lot of people get put forward for these awards, so it's great that they've won it. Well done.
Can I ask executive colleagues and non-execs to put their videos on for a second? So we can all give everyone a round of applause. Thank you very much, Izzy, and you have a great day, and please pass on our thanks to the rest of the team.
Thank you anyway from IHT staff.
Okay, you take care. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye, Joy. Okie dokie. So moving on then. What happened to Izzy? I was looking forward to telling her. Izzy, who is our winner of she's a staff nurse on Willoughby Award for members of the public. But not only has she won the Going the Extra Mile Award, but she's been nominated, I think, by the RCN for the Patient Choice Award for saving a patient's life on the way back from Thailand. And I was looking forward to hearing the story there, but we'll have to hold that in abeyance for the moment.
So she will join us at our virtual AGM, Russell.
Brilliant. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you for organising that in those few minutes. That's great. So moving on then to the update on the annual financial plan and contracts for 2021. Just for members of the public, the whole finances of the NHS at the moment are even more complicated than normal. So Kim, as our finance director, has my sympathy for having to wade her through the normal treacle of NHS finances, but through the fog and the treacle at the moment. So Kim, try and help us on this important issue and what it means and the decision you're asking us to make.
Okay, thank you, Russell. So I set out the paper, if I could draw your attention to a few sort of highlight areas just to ensure that the board and the public understand, I suppose, where we are. So we started the year with a very unusual situation where we were effectively set a new financial framework for the first 4 months of the year, where we were effectively given block allocations that were issued from the centre, and then we were then told that we would be eligible for some additional retrospective top-up payments to ensure that we delivered a break-even position on a monthly basis for the first 4 months of the year. We've subsequently have had confirmation that that financial regime will continue for the months of August and September. And then we've now been notified that there will be something similar in place for the second half of the year. But instead of a retrospective top-up arrangement, there'll be more of a prospective top-up arrangement. The allocations will also have been reviewed and changed to be reflective of the ask that the centre are now asking us to deliver in respect to phase 3 response to COVID-19. And that is about ensuring that we deliver at least 80% of our activity, 80% of last year's activity for September, moving to 90% in October. So they've rebased the resources. At the moment, we have yet to actually receive the allocations, and I understand that there is still a debate nationally going on around the financial ask that the NHS have put forward to Treasury. So we've still not had the formal confirmation of the allocations. But in the absence of that, we obviously as a trust need to give some budgets really to our divisions so that they have an envelope to spend within, so that we as a board have a plan and we can monitor against that plan and ensure that we are demonstrating good financial control. So effectively what I've done is work with the divisions to take into consideration really what the new financial regime is likely to look like, and take into consideration our current level of spend and what the divisions are forecasting in terms of spend moving forward for the rest of the year. And the two key things that we've also done is include the business case that went to management board around what resources is required to effectively get us to a place where we are in a position to deliver the phase 3 letter ask. And we've also made sure that we've built in a contingency for our winter. Separately, we've obviously done a number crunching behind the scenes to compare that proposed plan and compare it to our outturn position last year, including efficiency, to see how does that compare. And actually, it's there or thereabouts. I think it's it's comparable to that outturn level plus inflator. So on that basis, I think that the plan that we've put forward is reasonable. It is subject to some risk because obviously I've made some estimate in terms of what I think our share of what is likely to be the COVID spend. We believe that that is likely to be an envelope that's going to be issued at a system level. But again, we don't know what that is. So again, I've made an estimate. The plan is also on the basis that we deliver and meet the trajectories that are required in the phase 3 letters. So if we believe that, again, that this is going to be monitored on a system level, if we don't, as a system, don't deliver those trajectories, then we could be liable to some form of penalties as such. But equally, if we over-deliver, then there's potentially an incentive payment as well. But again, I don't have the details of how that's likely to work. So for ease, I've assumed in our plan no penalties and no additional income. Do you want me to pause there, Glenn, because you've got your hand up? Okay.
No, you finish off.
I'll let you finish.
Okay. So what I'm asking the board to do is approve the plan that I've put forward, which includes the additional investment required for our restoration and recovery of our elective work of 1.38 million. Also includes effectively a reserve set aside for winter for the rest of the year of 1.3 million. and to again approve the fact that we've not really set a further efficiency target for the rest of this year, even though behind the scenes we will obviously be working on efficiencies ready for future years. So that's what I'm asking the board to do, and give delegated authority to me and Glenn effectively to rebase the divisional budgets on that basis.
Thank you very much, Kim. Clearly explained a complicated subject. Glenn, you wanted to make some comments?
Yeah, I mean, just to reiterate some of those points, I mean, this was originally billed as investment to recover the cancer performance of the organisation, but it's more than that. It's the recovery and restoration of elective services, and it's winter. The initial budgets that we set for this year were based on the assumptions around COVID in the first half of the year. Although this is billed as a £2 million recurrent investment, actually, when you look at what we would have said in a normal year of outturn plus inflation, it actually fits within that envelope. So I just wanted to reassure non-executive colleagues, particularly, that this isn't increasing our cost base beyond what you would expect in inflation, which is actually a really good result. So a lot of work has gone on this with Helen and the teams to ensure that the divisions commit to the levels of activity necessary to recover those positions. And as Kim said, the thing for us now to do is to get some very clear funding envelopes for the divisions, get clear undertakings from them about the level of activity they'll deliver back, and then monitor those. So regardless of some of the risks that Kim's described to the overall trust position because of all those variables, I'd like some clarity down into the divisions about what we expect from them, and that's what Kim and I will now set out and do with exec colleagues.
Thank you, Glenn. Just before I open it up to other colleagues for questions or perspectives, Helen, does this allow you to get your best chance of delivering what we need to for winter, cancer and restoration of services?
Yes, it does, Russell. Kim and I have worked, and the teams have worked really closely together to identify what the divisions and the specialties need to be able to do that. And what the teams have done is worked on a modelling tool that says if they put X number of sessions in, what does that give them in terms of that performance? So for each additional piece of resource that we have put in, we have factored that one through. So in the conversations that Kim and I had in the Finance and Performance Committee meeting last week with the divisions was very, very clear around them saying they absolutely know that they will be held to account within the budget that is now set for them, and they have to deliver the ask within the phase 3 letter. So we can definitely bring something back in terms of what that starts to look like and our trajectories against that for each of the asks within the phase 3 letter.
Super, thank you, very clear. Questions and perspectives from colleagues? Please put your hand up. Rosemary.
Yeah, just was a clarification, Helen, in terms of the divisional ask. Are the divisions bought into this?
Absolutely, Rosemary, and you can't really do it without them telling you what they need. And so we have been through all of those specialties. We've sat down with the ADOs and their general managers and worked through each one of their specialties in terms of really understanding what they need. Mm-hmm. We've done some really concentrated pieces of work, particularly around the cancer recovery. And I'm sure we'll go on to talk about this later, but we prioritised the cancer recovery because that was the first ask, and our cancer performance had been, as you know, a little bit shaky for at least a year. And so we had shifted resources from doing elective activity into cancer. And now this level of commitment, they absolutely know that they should have enough resource now to deliver both.
Okay, well, I guess the key is making sure that's communicated right throughout the division so that everybody is bought in and know what they have to deliver.
Yeah, I'll tell you what this has done, Rosemary, which is I thought we had really good clinical engagement before COVID, but COVID has absolutely nailed that clinical engagement. It is the clinicians are really bought into the to recovering and restoring the activity and really understanding what that means for patients. So at the start of the cancer recovery, we had daily meetings with the clinical teams to track every single patient every single day. And now I'm seeing emails coming from the consultants to the bookers and the trackers to say, you haven't tracked this patient today, what's going on? So the buy-in is incredible really across all of the specialties, and I think that's a big plus for us. It's something that I thought we got it good before, but this is even better.
And I think the key thing is we're doing the right thing for the population that we serve, recognising the challenges of uncertainty that Kim sort of did in her introduction. If there are no other questions, everyone happy to approve? Please come off mute if you're not happy to approve. Okay, thank you, Kim. Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Glenn, for your hard work on that. I'm going to jump because of Sue Pike's diary and to try and be helpful to Sue. Sue, would you mind giving us the Freedom to Speak Up Guardian quarterly report now, please?
No, that's fine. Thank you, Russell. That's really helpful. So I'll take the report as read. There's a couple of highlights in there. It feels like we discussed the main one last time because we're out of sync with our reporting, which was our excellent position in the Speak Up Index. So that was fabulous news. You'll notice there's a couple of charts appearing now because we've got more data available, and going forward with the reports, what I really want to do is start picking out more divisional data to compare divisions and to compare things like length of time it takes us to close down a case, and also to look at detriment and to see if there's any correlation between where people speak up a lot and whether there's detriment there, or whether it's vice versa, because in our Guardians network we've been talking about where detriment can put people off speaking up. So for instance, if an area has got really low reporting, they might have high incidence of detriment, and that correlates. So that's the sort of thing that I want to start putting into our reports as we go forward. You'll see on page 4 there's a little bit of a spike around system, processes and policies, and just to explain what that is, some of that is around COVID and people not being sure how to work around. Some of it's around agile working and us changing how we do things. And the other bit of it is around where systems just aren't quite meeting the needs of staff. So a really good example of that might be within the ED division at the moment, and looking at that triumvirate leadership model and staff not quite understanding who they go to for what's a clinical decision, what's a managerial decision, and how those two things marry together. So that's the sort of stuff that comes up under systems and processes. You'll be pleased to know I'm working with Jane Tumbleson and also Joe Hall, have to get my names right, looking at how we can improve that, and looking at things like staff forums and how we get our ambassadors to be more involved in those teams and trying to understand leadership models and things. So there's lots of work going on around that area, which is brilliant. The other thing that I want to draw your attention to, which isn't really covered in the report because it's a bit out of date now, but next month, October, is Speak Up Month. We've got a couple of national campaigns going on, one of which is around the Speak Up ABC. So I want to challenge each and every one of you to come up with, every day if you can, from A to Z, a word that's associated with speaking up in the trust. So for instance, C could be courage, L could be learning, just to give you some examples. So I've got a whole A to Z list that I'll be tweeting out every day, and the National Guardians Office has asked us to use the hashtag #SpeakUpABC. And the other one that I'd really like to see you guys and senior managers do is to think about how you encourage as individuals speaking up in the organisation, and just do a little tweet that has the hashtag #SpeakUpToMe in it, just to get us talking about speaking up during October. So if you guys could do that, that would be brilliant. I know Glenn and Russell, you love your Twitter, so it's a mission to you.
Thank
Glenn?
you,
Yeah, I'll definitely have a go at that as long as you excuse me X and Z.
Yeah, I struggled. I'm not giving you my X and Z words because I could only think of one or two.
Thank you, Sue. Other questions and perspectives to Sue? Jeff?
Just briefly, congratulations on hitting the top 10, as they say, for your efforts. It's well earned, I have no doubt, and continuous hard work. Is there anything you want to say further about within your report? I think it's page 4, might have been page 3, around the BAME issues, and particularly around Black Lives Matter. Is this at the risk of appearing sort of kind of slightly controversial? Is this because it's on the telly? You know, the whole of the Black Lives thing, or is there something sort of fundamental or more fundamental within the feelings of our BAME community that is starting to surface because of confidence or quite what?
Possibly a little bit of both. We certainly had a peak of staff contacting me to raise concerns that coincided with the Black Lives Matter campaign and movement. We've also got more networks now with staff from a BAME background, and I go along to their meetings and always offer that extra support outside of meetings if people want to talk to me about issues that are personal to them. So I think it's a bit of both. I think there's more awareness that we need to do more. The Trust has had dialogue and communication about being open to Black Lives Matter and offering staff the opportunity to speak about issues. So I think it's a combination of both, really.
Glenn, did you want to add a point, or is that a legacy?
Yeah, no, it's a new one. Sorry. I mean, obviously, COVID has emphasised the inequality issues a little more from an NHS perspective, also. So we put some communication out. I put some communication out to staff, and I was fortunate that one of our BAME staff came and met with me and talked to me about how it felt from her perspective. And actually, as a consequence of that, hopefully, she's going to be giving me a bit of reverse mentoring so I can understand the issues more, because I can't put myself in the shoes of those individuals. So I think it's really important that we're proactive on this and support our BAME network.
No, absolutely, Glenn. And just to sort of emphasise the point, I've always been impressed by people who do speak up. It takes an act of courage often to speak up, and I know I'm speaking on behalf of the whole board to encourage any member of staff who are, we've got various different channels that you can speak up. Please do speak up. We never want you to feel isolated. We want you to be able to communicate any issues of concern you have. Sue Whelan-Tracy?
Yeah, I just wanted to share with colleagues that I attended the BAME network in the last quarter, and it was a really, it was a very big learning experience. And I would encourage colleagues, as the report says, support change and empower staff through learning and awareness of the issues. And I don't think any of us can fail to learn from turning up to any staff network. And when I say turning up, I say that because really we have to ask permission, obviously, but I don't think that we should wait to be invited. So that would be my suggestion.
Yeah. And any other comments from colleagues? I'd just like to go partly back, as we've been talking about BAME. A friend of mine has recently gone through a very painful process due to them speaking up at work. And they are a 55-year-old white male. And it took enormous courage, given the profile of the individual they were speaking up about, for him to do that. So I'd just like to emphasise again this point on courage. It's a courageous thing to speak up. It's great, Sue, the work you do in terms of providing that safe listening ear, taking seriously people who have gone to the step of speaking up. But I know as a board are committed to creating a culture of freedom to speak up. So please carry on doing what you're doing. But whether you're a older white male like I am, whether you're a young person whether you're from the BAME community, whatever community you're on, if you're even the chief executive could speak up. Okay.
When you said younger, Chairman.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. The important thing is for all of our colleagues to feel that they can speak up and they're encouraged to speak up. Be brave, be courageous. So thank you very much for the work you do.
Thank you. Thanks for bringing me forward as well.
No
Appreciate
worries.
it.
So we apologies for jumping around the agenda a little bit. But if we go now back to the Information Governance, Data Security and Protection Toolkit Assessment 2019-20, Charles, anything you particularly want to pull out from this?
Okay, well, the paper is as read, but I think the main issue here is that although we've made a lot of progress and we're largely compliant with these standards, there are still 4 cybersecurity standards that we're not compliant with. That's largely around security of email and resistance to phishing attempts and security of the web. The progress with that has really been delayed by a combination of COVID and vacancies in the IT department. There is a very clear program of how to get to full compliance. And a risk has been raised. We're certainly not alone in the NHS in this position. So I think that the position is clear and that there's a clear way to achieve what we need to.
Okay, thank you very much, Charles. So this is for approval. Any questions or perspectives from colleagues? Sue again, please.
Hi, Charles. I didn't just quite understand whether when that full programme of work, which I know is getting a lot of attention and is important, I'm grateful for it, will that then get us to attaining the Cyber Essentials Plus standard, or is that a separate set of actions?
No, that's a subset of it, so yes, okay. It will.
And if I may just ask a follow-up question, I'm aware of some changes to the law relating to information governance that was brought in as part of the emergency legislation. Does this toolkit cover those?
That's one I'd have to go back and find out. I think this predates any recent changes.
Yes, I thought that was probably the case, but and obviously we don't know how long these new this new legislation will have effect for. But I think we should just maybe diarise to look at it in the future in case we need to do something different.
I think you're referring to the sort of the loosening of some of the requirements to get us through COVID. I mean, yeah. I think they will. That is a temporary measure, and exactly when it will go back to normal, I don't know. We can look at it outside the meeting.
Time will tell. Thank you, Sue. Colleagues happy to approve? Please come off mute if you're not. Thank you, Charles. Please keep us briefed. And the winter flu plan, Fiona, update here. Particular points you want to pull out?
Yes, Chair, thank you. This is for approval, and I hope the board has taken assurance that it's a robust plan. It's almost the same as last year, with the only exception really being that luckily, actually, without knowing that there was a COVID pandemic coming around the corner, we actually learnt from last year's ordering of vaccines and preemptively ordered 75% of our vaccines to be delivered in the first month, which will now pay dividend unexpectedly. But if that comes about and it's not nationally controlled. So at the moment, incentives and plan and delivery of that plan is exactly the same as previous years. It's been successful and we haven't changed it, with that exception being that we're expecting delivery of almost all our vaccines in the first month.
Fingers crossed that it arrives. Thank you, Fiona. Questions and perspectives, Glenn?
Fiona, one of the things I picked up from the primary care side of this, which obviously is quite significant, is the suggestion that it's going to take longer to vaccinate individuals because of social distancing and infection prevention measures. Is there an impact on our approach on that, or are we expecting it to be similar to last year?
So yes, I guess that's the other exception, is that we won't have drop-in sessions. So you'll recall that the execs and non-execs queued down the corridor for their vaccines last year, and we can't have that this year. So we are in the progress of developing a very similar to the antibody and antigen staff testing, in that it was a clinic slot that you book into to stop that collection of staff in one area.
Okay, thank you, Fiona, for that clarification. And any other questions or perspectives from colleagues? Everyone happy to approve? Please come off mute if you're not. Okay, duly approved. Thank you, Fiona. Good luck. And I'll be first in, it won't be a queue, but I'll be first in line, so to speak. So moving on then to the performance review and assurance part of our board meeting. We start off with Glenn, your report, please.
Thank you, Russell. I'll just take you through the headlines of the report. First item is the stage 3 plan letter, which I did actually talk about last month because it had just arrived ahead of the board meeting, but there's some detail in there, and obviously we talked a little bit about that. We spent some time this morning talking through that as a board also. Good progress being made on this. The whole emphasis of this is that we get back up to close to normal levels of activity before we enter the winter period. And it's obviously going to be a challenging winter period for lots of reasons, but that's the ambition, and those percentage milestones that we talked about earlier are reiterated in this report. And there's also a system level financial incentive arrangement, which is a little complicated, as Kim explained to us earlier, but probably best not to be distracted by that. Probably the most important thing is to focus on getting our patients treated as quickly as we possibly can. We just talked about flu campaign, so the biggest vaccination programme in the history of the NHS, so moving from a normal level of about 2.9 million vaccines to 5.4 million vaccines, and also preparing for the prospect of a COVID vaccine, which would also be at that 5.4 million level, but potentially 2 vaccines for each individual because it has to be given 28 days apart. So the logistics of that, coupled with the infection prevention issues, and a challenging winter period mean that this will be difficult. The other bit that reminded me on yesterday is we've got COVID, we've got exit from EU as well in the middle of that winter period as well, which could potentially affect supply chain. So we'll need to be on top of our game throughout. I then move on to the people plan, which is explained there. We will cover this in much more detail as a board as we look at how we respond to the issues within the people plan. Personally, I don't see it creating any significant change of direction for us. We've been very focused on staff well-being and support to staff. Obviously, we've been doing some more things during COVID, and the intention of this people plan is to continue those and to also use the motivation of being an NHS employee at the moment as something that hopefully will recruit more individuals to join us. Then I refer to an additional winter capital allocation. So Prime Minister visited Wye Valley recently as members of our group and made an announcement on the day that we would be receiving a £2 million allocation, and we'll be spending that money on some tweaks in A&E, creating some additional capacity in some of our specialties, and the details of that are being worked up at the moment. Obviously that will need to move quite quickly. I then refer to the STAR board, the Midlands Region Strategic Transformation and Recovery Board. I'll be involved in the how to lead, organise and run the NHS Midlands work stream, and I'm very much looking forward to that. That will hopefully help us to structure our integrated care system with a bit more grip and a bit more provider coordination than we've had so far. And then finally, importantly, the planning application for our multi-storey car park has been submitted. So far, feedback has been positive on that. We're emphasising within this that even though we're moving to new ways of working, reducing many contacts with patients. We still need space on this site. It's grown significantly over the last few years. We need to ensure that our staff can park safely, but actually by creating more parking we will have a positive impact on the environment, because at the moment many people queue outside the hospital and we cause major disruption to our local community. So lots of support from local residents to get that scheme up and running. That's all I wanted to go through.
Thank you very much, Glenn. And just to assure members of the public, much of what Glenn talked about, for example, the people plan, we touched on this morning in our board workshop. Questions and perspectives to Glenn? Okay, I think Glenn, you sufficiently covered it off this morning as well. Thank you very much, and thank you for your hard work. We are very fortunate as a trust to have Glenn as our Chief Executive being involved in so many different aspects, both at a national level and a regional level, in terms of steering the NHS through these extraordinary times. We therefore move on to the Integrated Performance Dashboard. Glenn, I do know you need to go on to another call in a little while, so just leave when you need to. So Anne, would you care to do an introduction for us, please?
Sure, thank you, Russell. The Integrated Performance Dashboard provides us this month with a useful indicator of the trust and indeed our population's response to coronavirus pandemic, with signs of return to more normal levels of activity. We have, as reference, submitted our initial activity plans for the restoration of services as part of the Coventry and Warwickshire system return. And that's been really useful in providing that clarity for the organisation for the remainder of 2021. Divisional teams, as we've already heard, both clinical and operational, are engaged and have been engaged in that work. We're starting to see some green shoots in our operational performance, and site management made all the easier with the welcome reduction in COVID-19 cases. And the challenge, as we've heard a number of times today, will be in terms of sustaining that as we progress through the remainder of this year. The workforce metrics, are fantastic and demonstrate really good progress around reducing sickness and vacancy levels. And a cause that's been close to my heart for a long time is the out of hospital sickness levels, and it's really positive to see that improvement, but also accompanied by a really good understanding. And the challenge now, of course, will be sustaining those improvements and the impact that different ways of working have had on staff health and well-being. Some positive news also there in terms of the application to NHS charities. And again, Anne referenced this morning at board workshop the key posts that have been appointed to in their participation, hopefully, but the nominations that we put forward for their participation in the Workforce Race Equality Standards Expert Programme. I think that will be a really useful resource as we progress and move forward with the equality, diversity and the inclusion agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anne. Any questions or perspectives to Anne, or shall we get into the detail? Okie dokie, so diving then into the detail. Fiona, I think you're first up, please.
Yeah, I haven't got very much more to add, Chair, to my commentary that I've already put in the report. It's a fairly stable position in terms of the quality and safety KPIs. There is still some work to do, as you can see, on the nurse care indicators, and we're doing that within the divisions, but I haven't got any more to say. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Fiona. Any questions or perspectives to Fiona? What's worrying you most, Fiona?
I suppose what we've already said in terms of winter and flu and COVID and that all coming together as a perfect storm. I think the staffing is still difficult in some areas, but no, it's okay.
Okay, good. Colleagues, happy to move on then. So Helen, what would you like to pull out of your report, please?
Thank you, Russell. Just to highlight that we are starting to see improvements along many of our performance indicators. A&E is still struggling. However, we have a new ADO in post, Jane Tombleson, and she's very experienced in understanding particularly the emergency division, but really in relation to ED performance. And Jane is leading on our urgent and emergency care work stream as part of our restoration, and has got an exceptionally robust plan in place that will deliver the ED performance, but also some of the projects that are coming out around NHS 111 first, and also the same day emergency care. And I think that is a really key piece of work for us moving into the winter, and also to deliver the phase 3 requirements alongside that. And I think that will also then support our continuing of our elective performance during winter, as well as we reduce admissions within the organisation appropriately. We are starting to see the elective activity pick up, and August data really should start to give that in much more detail for us, because we finished the improvement works that we were doing around theatres and around the green pathways for theatres. And so we are able to operate at almost full capacity now for our theatres. The only theatre that unfortunately, due to the green pathway work, that we have isolated somewhat has been the ophthalmology theatre. We have put that ophthalmology work out within the independent sector for the time being, until we can get a different solution into Stratford as part of our restoration work. So that shouldn't impact on our activity or the ask in phase 3. I think one of the things that's caused me a little bit of concern is that the slight rise that we're seeing month on month now in our stranded patient numbers, and we've had some excellent performance during COVID, and we're starting to see that creep up now. So a lot of focus we need to put back on that, and some of that is around some of the making sure that we maintain our really slick discharge processes that we saw during COVID. Our occupancy rates are starting to get back to sort of normal levels, or they still are around 70%, and that's not a bad thing, because actually by holding some of that capacity, it does allow us to be a little bit more flexible. It allows us to have capacity if we do see another surge. So I won't be racing towards a 92% occupancy. We have rebased, had looked at all of the beds, particularly those that we've taken out from a social distancing point of view, and be very, very clear how we put all of those services back in. I think my plan, once we finish the ITU and the Willoughby swap, which gives us better infection control measures and isolation with an ITU, is to give the orthopaedic team a bit of free rein and their ward back. They haven't been in their ward since the beginning of COVID, and allow them to recover the orthopaedic position before we get into winter. So we're ahead of the game on that, and they're very keen, and they have started in earnest, which is a positive. Diagnostic wait times are beginning to improve, so that's really, really good. And we are starting to see good recovery across all modalities for diagnostics. And cancer is improving steadily month on month. Cancer is beginning to improve, and we'll see further improvement next month as well. And right at the end of the report, I did put the charts around our 62-day and our 104-day performance for the cancer breaches. And if you remember, at the beginning of August, I think it might even have been the end of July, we were asked to do a really concentrated piece of work around bringing those numbers down. So the charts are a little bit misleading, because some of them include the tertiary referrals, which are referrals that we send to providers that are over the 35-day cut-off point. And so what we have seen is a 70% reduction in our own 104-day breaches, which is phenomenal. And we only have a handful of breaches left for us to deal with. And I think that's around about 20 breaches left, and all of those are dated. And we've had a 43% reduction in the 62-day sorry, yes, the 62-day breaches. And again, that's really, really good work. The 62 one is a little bit more fragile because of trying to meet the 28-day faster diagnosis standard. So that's where we're concentrating our effort on moving forward. I'll pause there before I go on to the out of hospital one in case anybody's got any questions around the acute element of the performance report.
Actually, what I prefer, Helen, is for you to do out of hospital. So I want us to move away from the ideas with 2 bits. Let's just hear you in its entirety.
Okay, I'll keep going then. So the out of hospital team have really stepped back up and restored many of their services, hanging on to the really good best practice that they have been delivering. Anne's already mentioned the significant improvements that they've had within the sickness rates within out of hospital, and during F&P earlier on last week, we heard some really great stories around how they have really tackled their sickness rates and some of the things that have done. And we want to share that learning across the organisation because we've still got pockets where that is a challenge. There's excellent work within ISPAR, and ISPAR again has been a godsend for the organisation in terms of managing some of the initial response to COVID. And some really good performance around the urgent response and the first day assessment target within the report. The team are also working really, really hard on the reason to reside criteria and supporting that timely discharge for patients out of the acute setting into out of hospital care and being supported in their own homes. So I think there's some really great work going on in the out of hospital, and there's a great deal of innovation there that they have actually captured during their restoration and recovery work.
Thank you, Helen. Questions and perspectives. Glenn, first of all.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I mean, firstly, we saw again this morning, didn't we, how the partnership working in our local system is helping the discharge of patients. And I just wanted to commend Helen on the winter plan work. I know we'll see a bit more of it next time, but the two of us had the pleasure of meeting with Department of Health colleagues a couple of weeks ago, as directed by the CQC, because they wanted to see the way that we were firstly modelling the winter scenario, but then also the way that we brought on board clinical engagement in order to put those solutions forward. And it's another really good plan shaping up. And of course, we'll need it this winter, but it's certainly a good plan.
Great, thank you, Glenn. And Simon, I think you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Helen, I think there's clearly a lot of very good work going on as we are driving towards full recovery. But the one chart, the one indicator that stands out is RTT, which is clearly challenged. And I know a lot of good work's gone in, and then performance lags behind the good work that's gone in before we see RTT tick up again. But do we have any sense of when we would expect to see that start to improve again?
Thank you, Simon. I think the ask nationally at the moment is not to recover the RTT position, but deal with the long waiters and those patients that are clinically urgent. That doesn't mean to say I haven't got RTT in the back of my mind and making sure that we chip away at that. But we should start to see that over the next couple of months improve on its own because of the number of patients that have tipped over the 18-week and the reduction that we had seen in the number of referrals. So as the referrals then start to increase, it kind of balances itself out a little bit. So the team are committed to trying to recover that position, but our concentration at the moment is on eliminating the 52-week breaches, because obviously we started to see those and we hadn't had any 52-week breaches for a very long period of time. So we need to eliminate those and then start to deal with those patients that are long waiting on the list and start to chip away at that. So our priorities are slightly different for the time being.
Okay, understood. Thank you, Helen.
Have we lost Russell?
I think so. I think it's you, Glenn.
Okay, so whilst we wait for Russell to rejoin us, I'd probably just make a comment about whilst RTT may look challenging from our perspective, actually compared to other trusts, we've always done well. So it looks in a worse position based on what we're used to, rather than comparing with other trusts in the NHS. And I'm sure we'll get it back quickly. Russell, we lost you briefly.
No, I apologise. I pressed the wrong button. You never trust a chairman with technology. Chris, I think you had a question.
Yeah, just very quickly, cancer urgent GP referrals. Helen, the conversion rate is at 10%, and I know some board meetings ago we talked about tackling that with GPs, because that is a waste of your resources. It's quite a low conversion rate. Is there any progress on that in terms of educating GPs?
That is still work in progress, Chris. What has happened over the last month is that quite a big chunk of that is around breast referrals, and they have changed the symptomatic breast referral form. So in the last couple of weeks, we've hardly received any referrals at all for breast symptomatic, but we've seen a huge increase in the breast to cancer referral. So I don't know whether people are just switching from one referral form to the other. There's also some work that we're trying to do, particularly around lower GI, colorectal, around straight to test, so that we can get that diagnostic done before we then move that patient onto a cancer pathway or not, and that will also help with our 28-day faster diagnosis standard. So I think it's fair to say it's work in progress. I do have a regular meeting with the LMC and a number of other GPs, and actually there's one this week where we talk about referrals and we talk about the quality of referrals, so that we're directly feeding back into the GPs with examples of referrals that have caused us some challenges. So that's still in its infancy. We've only met 2 or 3 times in the last sort of 6 weeks. So I'm hoping that some of that seeing of the referrals and actually seeing the quality of them might start to have that impact locally.
Yeah,
Charles, did you want to add anything to that? I saw your hand go up.
Yes. I wouldn't say that necessarily a low conversion rate is a bad thing. No. You know, as a nation, we're behind, the rest of Europe in terms of early cancer diagnosis. And of course, if you want to improve that, you have to assess more patients to actually pick up on some of these, very subtle tumours. If you look in, Germany or Japan, where they actually do a lot more scanning, they have 4 to 5 times the amount of diagnostics and radiology. They're going to pick up more small tumours, and certainly the GPs are all being told be suspicious and refer more. Okay. Having said all of that, what we don't want is, use of the 2-week wait pathway to bypass other waits, which sometimes happen.
Yeah. It's about the appropriateness and the
Absolutely,
use of
Chris.
Thank you, Helen.
But just to give members of the public assurance, we have a big focus as a board on cancer, and I know Helen's, and with the support of Kim and other colleagues, is doing everything possible to get our cancer performance to where the people of Warwickshire would want it to be. Keeping the pace moving. Finally, Sue.
Yeah, hi Helen. I picked up that there's an error in the main call centre response time this month. It says 77% was achieved, but it's going to be 81%. But I just wanted to ask what are you noticing in terms of patient calls coming in? Because there's obviously been a switch to a lot more telephone-based clinics. I've been in a position to see a few letters this month inviting patients to those clinics, and I'm just wondering, are we getting more calls about them? Are people double checking their appointments? How is the sort of telephone channel changing?
Sorry, so I can't answer that question. I haven't got that detail, but I can provide that for you outside of that. I hadn't asked for that detail within the report about what the types of calls were, but I can get that information for you.
That'd be great, Helen, if you could, and if we can just put that as a matter arising.
Yeah.
Okay, team. Helen, just to say on behalf of the whole board, it's been a very, very challenging 4 months for everyone on the front line, and you and Fiona, particularly with Charles's teams, have been at the forefront of that. So thank you very much for your hard work. Moving on then to Anne. Anne, what would you like to pull out of your report?
Thank you, Russell. I think what I wanted to say is, I mean, this has been an absolute pleasure this month to pull together. And I think because it's so positive, my colleagues have done a really good job of drawing out all the highlights for me. So given the opportunity that we had this morning to talk about recruitment, and as Anne has highlighted, the really good news about the NHS Charities Together bids that were successful, and the opportunity that we've had to submit nominations for the National Res Expert programme. And I will update the board in relation to those nominations, because there is a further process that the individuals have to go through in terms of selection. There's nothing more I wanted to pull out, but I'd be very happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Anne. Questions and perspectives to Anne? Simon?
Thank you, Russell. And I just give you a compliment, actually, more than anything. It's just really lovely to see that in the last 3 months, the sickness figures are going absolutely in the right direction, and particularly on out of hospital, which is hard. So I think that's really good news, and hopefully a credit to the strategy that's gone in. And at 3.71% is much more like the sort of level you'd want to and expect to see actually going forward. So I think that's great. Yeah.
Absolutely, thank you for that, Simon. And I do think there's a real link that we're trying to draw out and be able to evidence of the link to people feeling in control of their day, which makes such a huge difference. We know, those say old health and safety executive indicators, that being in control is one of the most important factors to well-being.
Yeah, sure, I totally agree.
Thank you.
Okie dokie. I think Chris and Charles, yours were legacy hands up, unless you have a question. No, that's fine, thank you. And I just wanted to emphasise the point in the public board that we talked about this morning, which is we've had a phenomenal tidal wave of applicants. And I really want to reach out to those who may not have considered a career in the NHS before. A career in the NHS is a fantastic career. We are totally focused as a board on the quality of your character. Whatever your background is, you may have not gone to the best school, you may not have had the best life opportunity or best start in life, you may have had challenges growing up. Whatever your sort of background is, the NHS welcomes you to apply. And if you've got the right character, you can thrive within the NHS. Plus, the pension's great, the work colleagues are great, and quite often the cake is very good as well. So please do apply to the NHS. It would be great to have you on board with us. So moving on then to Kim. Kim, what would you like to pull out of the finance report?
I was just about to say, it sounded like you were talking about me earlier, but that's fine. But anyway, the finance report, I think I've obviously set out the finances in my earlier slot, but the key things to note for the current year-to-date position is that we claimed an additional £2.4 million as additional retrospective top-up in order to break even. Our cash position remains strong, and we continue to obviously work with the divisions to ensure that we support them to deliver the recovery. And those are the key things I just wanted to highlight.
Thank you, Kim. Any questions or perspectives to Kim? You and I both obviously had a similar background, Kim.
Yes.
Rosemary.
Yeah, quick question. on agency staff, Kim. Most of the growth in the agency staff in this last month or last few months has been in other. Now, I just wondered, is that sort of IT staff, project staff, or what's going on here?
Yeah, there is a significant spend in IT. There's also a clinical coding spend in there as well. And as you recall, I think it was the workshop session earlier, I asked about what are we doing specifically around targeting recruitment around IT in order to reduce our agency costs. So that was linked into addressing this issue.
Right, yeah, because I think it's we've seen before the challenges of recruiting strong IT people and targeting correctly.
Yes. And just to assure members of the public, we talked about that this morning, didn't we, Rosemary, and the importance of growing our own. Any other questions to Kim? Okie dokie, thank you very much, Kim. Charles, what would you like to pull out of the mortality report, Ryan?
It's a very stable picture, and we do have a little bit of information now on how perhaps our COVID mortality was during April. Although it's not risk assessed, our mortality was 25% and the national figure was on average 28%. So it certainly doesn't look as though we're an outlier in that respect. We also, our mortality in that period for non-COVID conditions wasn't raised, and that's reassuring. We're now fully recruited to our medical examiner body, and we've actually now reviewing all deaths and in a much better position with regards to learning from deaths, although still awaiting the IT system. So all in all, a very stable, reassuring position.
Thank you very much, Charles. Any questions from colleagues to Charles on the mortality report? Can we please watch those legacy hands, colleagues? That would be great. Colleagues, therefore, happy to move on to the nurse staffing report. Fiona.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, again. So nurse staffing is similar report to previous months. It's a 4% gap for nurse staffing across inpatient areas, with very little change for out of hospital. Is still in a good position, and maternity and AHPs with the exception of radiology. The good piece of news this month is that we have recruited in the last couple of months actually a physiotherapy ward manager, which is our first therapist ward manager post rather than a nurse, based at Saru, which has obvious connections there in terms of improving the therapy philosophy of that ward and that team. So that's really good news, and I hope her every success, as I hope the board does.
Thank you, Fiona. Absolutely. Questions and perspectives to Fiona on the nurse staffing report? Okay, thank you very much, Fiona. So moving on then to the Clinical Governance Committee report for the 12th of August. Bruce, what would you like to pull out?
Technology on. I'll take the report as read, but I'd like to make a couple of comments on it. I've drawn out items for the board's attention, and items 4 and 6 in that list are of course for very good practice, which we should also note. I think the biggest discussion arose out of the Cancer Services annual report, item 7, and I'm very pleased to hear from other directions that progress is being made in the short term, and I hear also the longer term review of a possible IT support system for that is up in the very near future. I think it's very important to look where it's done well and copy them. I think it would be foolish to reinvent itself here, and I do think that the discussion that we had indicated clearly that we need to strengthen the input to the data and indeed how we make decisions and what happens within the process of managing the pathway. Happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Bruce. Questions and perspectives to Bruce? Okie dokie, Bruce, thank you very much for your hard work in chairing that committee. We'll move therefore on to the F&P meeting of the, just bear with me, the 25th of June and 30th of July. Simon.
Thank you, Russell. Well, both of those are written reports that follow up from verbal reports at previous meetings. So the only thing I would really highlight on F&P is that from next month, we begin the new format F&P for the next 3 months. So the report will change slightly in the way it comes at future board meetings.
Okay, super. Thank you, Simon. Any questions or perspectives on those written reports? Thanks, Simon, and keep us briefed on the way the new F&P works, in your opinion.
And will do.
So we then have had the Freedom to Speak Up Guardian's quarterly report from Sue. So we'll move on to items for noting and information. The first is the NHS People Plan Summary and Self-Assessment. And we've talked about this a lot. Anything you particularly wanted to put out?
No, I just thought it was important in terms of giving assurance to the board to set out that assessment of where we are now. I think we are in a good place, but there's always more to do, and hopefully the report clarifies and highlights the areas that we'll be working on in the next few months.
Okay, super. Thank you very much. And any questions or perspectives on the NHS People Plan Summary and Self-Assessment? Great, thank you. And keep us briefed on how all of that work develops, but it's good to know that we, on almost all areas, are ahead of the curve anyway. We therefore move on to the summary of ratified policies. Anne Coyle.
Nothing to add, take the paper as read, and happy to take any questions.
Questions and perspectives to Anne on the summary of ratified policies? Okie dokie, then we'll move on to the Infection Prevention Board annual report. Fiona.
Yes, thank you. So this was written as last year's annual report, really ahead of us again, knowing that COVID was coming. So there is a very small section on COVID and what we did there, but the main part of that reporting in terms of annual reporting will be next year. As you can see, it's been another very successful year for the infection prevention team and the trust in terms of the KPIs related to infection prevention. And again, I want to ask the board to congratulate Christine Giorgio and her team for their efforts throughout the year at keeping our patients and our staff safe. I am pleased to have included in the winter plan financial provision, though, some increased resource for Christine's team, because I think there's recognition, although they are excellent, and have had a number of successful year-on-year performance now. This year has taken its toll, and with COVID going to continue to affect all of our staff and all of our patient services for the foreseeable future, I think there's recognition across the executive team that additional resource is needed to maintain that resilience and sustain this type of performance, really. So we are putting that provision in.
Fantastic, and please pass on our thanks to the team. Any questions or perspectives to Fiona? Thank you, Fiona. We therefore move on to the Constitution update report, which I'll take as read. The only real point of real substantive discussion is around governor tenure, which is by no means a straightforward issue. I'd like just to note that our longest serving governors are often those which go the absolute extra length in terms of working on behalf of the trust. So the issue of governor tenure is a difficult one, and it's the subject of continued debate, but it's just an update report. Any questions on the Constitution work that's going on? Okie dokie, thank you very much. I'll keep you briefed on how that develops. We'll therefore move on to the committee minutes, the Clinical Governance Committee minutes of the 8th of July. Anything, Bruce, you wanted to add?
Nothing to add.
Okay, super. Thank you, Bruce. Any other business, therefore? Any other business from colleagues? Please come off mute if you've got any other business. Okay, so we move on to questions from members of the public and governors. There are 2 questions. I'll read them out, but I know they'll be minuted. The first question is, what number of beds is the Director of Operations targeting to provide for the winter flu pandemic second phase in 2021? And how well are they doing in trying to achieve this? Will the Trust achieve this target without declaring stage 4 and sending patients to the private sector? Helen.
Thank you, Russell. As we discussed this morning, the first iteration of the winter plan came in as part of the response to phase 3. However, I am bringing a more detailed plan to the board next month. I think it's a tricky one because there is a worst case scenario, a likely scenario, and a scenario that I probably quite like. And I think from a worst case scenario point of view, we're probably looking at 149 bed challenge. I think that is unrealistic, given what we know about how we manage.
When you say unrealistic, do you mean unlikely?
Unlikely, yes, yeah. I would, and that's, I might have to eat my hat, but I think that is unlikely that we'll require that number of beds. And so I am working through a number of schemes which we'll see in detail next month. I think in reality, we're probably looking at about an 80-bed challenge, which isn't dissimilar to a number of other years that we have seen. And that is the proviso that we will still continue with all of our elective activity as well. I think saying that we will never declare a level 4, that's like saying how long is a piece of string, because there are different factors that impact on us as an organisation, that some of those are outside of our control. So it's usually about how the system is feeling, because we do respond with mutual aid to other organisations that are struggling. And we know that more often than not, we are at the ambulance at the mercy of West Midlands ambulance crews, particularly if there are long wait times to offload in other hospitals. So we do see out of area numbers increase during the winter. So I think that we have a good plan. I'm using the same methodology and some of the assumptions that we've made in previous years and working through that moving forward. And I say we will see that in detail. I think in relation to the independent sector, that the capacity within the independent sector is contracted and paid for nationally as NHS capacity, and so we would be silly not to use that during this period of time, and so we are maximising that capacity. That the contract changes in December, and after December we would have to buy capacity there if we wanted it, and so I'm going to use that capacity now to support the people that are waiting the longest on the waiting list, and any urgents that we can do, so that while we are in a much calmer COVID state, we're encouraging patients to come in and have their operations and use the independent sector to do that, rather than them still having a little bit of a fear factor to come to the acute hospital. I will say that we are safe, and it is very safe for patients to come and have their operations here, because we are operating along a number of green pathways and we have COVID-free areas, so it is safe to come. But if patients don't want to, then we can use the independent sector for them to have their operation.
Super. Thank you, Helen. Very comprehensive reply. I think your point about the independent sector, it would be daft, and in fact highly inappropriate, given that the taxpayer is paying for the independent sector, for us not to be using it to its full capability. The second question was, has the Coventry and Warwickshire Pathology Network, I'll read what the question is. woken up to the challenges of providing much quicker results for the normal and routine blood and other tests whilst functioning as a COVID-19 test lab. The idea reported in the clinical governance meeting, reported at this meeting of the board, in the network having one operative working alone after standard hours, seems to be rooted in the 1950s NHS, not the 2020s. That's a verbatim question. Helen, what would be your appropriate reply to that be?
So we do have a contract meeting tomorrow, interesting, so it's perfect timing. So we know that there have been some challenges within the pathology network around staffing, and they're not unlike any organisation. Often we're having short-term sickness. So there are some plans in place to redesign the work that happens within the labs that are on site to be much more responsive to urgent care and the acute needs of patients whilst they're within the acute trust, and that's going to be the same across all of Coventry and Warwickshire. So we will get an update on that tomorrow. I think it is fair to say that we are having some challenges at the moment, but we're having regular conversations with the pathology network around assurance that they are going to improve that turnaround times. We are starting to see green shoots around that, but what I would say is that it's not consistent, and so we still do have some challenges, and we continue to have some challenges with the turnaround times on the COVID swabs as well.
Super, thank you very much, Helen. That's the end of the public questions. So we look forward to inviting members of the public to our next board. So if you could turn off the video, that would be fantastic.